Hello everybody, welcome to the third video in this YouTube series. So today we're going to be writing our first couple hooks that are going to make development a lot easier on this application. So this is not actually the hook we're going to write in this YouTube video. We're going to use it in a later YouTube video, but I wanted to use it as an example so that we can kind of get the basic structure of what a hook looks like. Our other hooks are going to be much simpler. But this is pretty much what every hook is going to look like. You're going to Well, no, we'll do some different things with some of our other hooks, but this is what 95% of your hooks will look like. And basically, you're just going to set some state variable, and then you're going to use this useEffect hook to kind of listen to some sort of state change in your application, and then you're going to set this new state variable accordingly. And what the subscribers of this hook will do, or the components that use this hook, they will get updated every time this useEffect hook gets called and this user details in this case get updated. Then the component that uses this hook will also get updated. So it's basically a way of extending your component to use sort of this reusable logic that a lot of your components might need to use. Important caveat though is it's not like you have this hook as like a global store of state and then every component that uses it is going to access that global store of state. That's not really what's going on at all. So what's actually going on is each component that uses this, basically the component gets extended, right? So here's your component foo, and then here's the use hook around it, and yeah, you kind of get the idea. And then for every component that does the same thing, this hook's going to extend the functionality, but the important thing is they all have their own local copy of, in this case, user details and set user details. So hooks are not a solution to sharing state between components. It'd be kind of cool if there was an option to do that. I think that would reduce the need for a lot of other like state management libraries. So I think that'd be cool, but it's not something you can do in React. For the most part, you can take advantage of things like local storage and accomplish that behavior, but there are costs to that as well, and it's not traditionally the way of doing things. State should be managed in memory for the most part, unless you have a specific need for it to be managed elsewhere. Cool. So yeah, that was the introduction. So let's just get right into coding this first one. So I created this hooks directory just right underneath our source directory. And we're going to start writing this hook that's basically just going to keep track of what the width of our window is. If you ever written just basic like JavaScript and HTML application, it can actually be kind of tricky to get the window width because it can change at any point. So you can't just store it in like a static member variable or someplace in memory because it can always change. So the cool thing about this hook pattern is it will update the state variable every time every time something changes that we define in the useEffect hook, as you saw earlier. So yeah, probably the easiest way to do it is just start coding it. So let's just do that. So we're going to start off, like I said earlier, the useEffect and useState you're going to be using in like probably 95% of the hooks that you write yourself. So we will do just exactly that. So we've got this import here, and then we're just going to go right into defining it. So use window, we're using width. So use window width. We don't need to pass anything into here, fortunately. And at the bottom here, we will just export it by default. So use window width. And just like we've said before, pretty similar structure across all your hooks. So you're just going to define your state variable. So we are using TypeScript, so we're going to add a type annotation here as well. And start this off with, we'll use this global window object that's just available through the browser API. And we'll do inner width. So this will give us the inner width of the application. There are other options. There's also like outer width and client width and stuff. And basically what inner width gets you is, I believe, everything from edge to edge, not including the scroll bar. Maybe if you use client width or outer width, you'll get the scroll bar as well. But inner width is what we want. And then in this case, it'll include everything up until like the bookmarks right here. This is kind of confusing because I'm using this Chrome extension. But yeah, so everything up until the bookmarks all the way to the bottom of the page, that'll be the height. So that is what this window API gets you. And yeah, so we give it an initial value. And then basically we just want to make sure that every time the width of the page changes, we're going to update that value. So we'll use this use effect hook. Just like that. We'll create this function called handle resize. And every time that gets run, we just want to set the width back to window.inner width. Cool. And yeah, so now we need to add something so that it keeps updating. So we're going to add an event listener every time the shape or size of the window changes. We are going to call this handle resize function. And then, yeah, every time it changes, it could be vertical or horizontal, we're just going to reset the width. And that's good. And then we actually want to clean up our event listeners. So whenever this hook gets detached from the DOM, we're going to want to call this remove event listener function. So if you had a bunch of event listeners in a large application that you forget to remove, it could potentially slow down your application. For this application, it's not likely to ever be an issue, but it's still good practice to remove your event listeners in case you ever do work on a larger application. And it's just correct, it's JavaScript. Efficiency is not always the biggest issue in the world, but you still want to be efficient and correct code where you can. So that's what we're going to do. So yeah, that's all it is. All this is right here is a dependency list for the use effect hook. And basically what you can do is you can pass a variable in so that every time the variable changes, this use effect hook will get called. So you could envision a world where we rely on this width variable, and then every time that width variable changes, then this hook will get called. You can see obviously we're setting the width in this use effect hook, so it's actually not so good of an example. This would create sort of an infinite loop situation. But yeah, let's make sure, does everything look good? Everything looks great. So yeah, then all you need to do is return the width, and we have a functional hook. So we're going to copy all of this code, and we're going to do the same thing for height. Use window height, .ts, boom, and we'll change this to height, change this to set height. Inner width, we now want inner height, and of course set height, height. And probably want to name this something better. Cool, and yeah, just like that, we have the exact same hook. This will listen for changes or resizes to the DOM and then update the height accordingly, except right here we need to fix that as well. Cool, so we have our first two hooks. They're pretty simple. It's worth pointing out that our use hooks library actually comes with basically these sort of hooks written in. But they're pretty easy to write, and I think it's worth going through. There's some, you always see memes about the package.json being too big, and that is certainly the case. QRSTU. All right, we're looking for use hooks. Use hooks TypeScript. So use. Here's this use local storage hook I've mentioned in another video. That's certainly the hook I found the most useful in this library. Just makes working with local storage a lot easier. Similarly, session storage, if you want to work with that, you can do that here. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So you could just use this use window size hook, and it'll return you the width and the height, and yeah, it looks like, yeah, it does exactly the same thing, just this weirder sort of library syntax that's minimalized. They call some of their other hooks that they write, but basically you can see the same basic idea. It's creating an event listener for resize, calls this handle size function, and it sets the size to this inner width and inner height. So it does the same thing. We separated it into 2 separate hooks, and I think it's more readable, and it's an easy hook to write. So yep, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully, even if you're not building the same application, that you'll find hooks like this useful for your own projects. And yeah, see you next time.